Shiur is dedicated to Nishmas Rachaleya Bas Rav Chaim Tzvi. Okay, we have been discussing various aspects of Bishul. What we ended off with in the shiur last time, we'll do a quick review, is there's certain situations we generally assume based on a Mishnah, Masechet Shabbos, that Kli Rishon is Mevashel, a Kli Sheini is not Mevashel. That's the general rule. But we have seen already a number of instances where we find that the halacha is that a Kli Sheini, certain situations, does have the capacity to cook. So what we want to just review quickly is what are those 4 different reasons that you find that your Kli Sheini does have in certain cases capacity of bishul, and that's why we'll avoid la halacha cooking in general most foods, not every single food, but most foods in a Kli Sheini. So we saw the Mishnah in Masechet Shabbos and Daf Kaf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, which tells us that ha'ilfas va'akadera shavir mirutachin lo yitein l'tocho tavlin. You can't put spices into a Kli Rishon shelo al gabe ha'esh. You've taken the pot off the fire. It's a Kli Rishon. It's the pot in which the fire was underneath. However, it's no longer on the fire right now. The Mishnah tells us you're not allowed to put food into that Kli Rishon. However, no senhu l'tocha ka'or l'tocha tamchu. You're allowed to pour it off that from that pot into a second pot, the Kli Sheini, and now you can go ahead and put food into that Kli Sheini. So the simple rule is Kli Rishon is mevashel, Kli Sheini is not mevashel. That's the simple rule. However, we already saw indications that a Kli Sheini does have the capacity of bishul. We saw the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Mem Hey, which tells us that kuyas ha'ispenin, when it comes to those small fish, or the dag maliach, the salty fish, they can become cooked even in a Kli Sheini. We saw the shita of the Yereim in the sugya of Ein Bishul Achar Afia, that you're not allowed to put bread even into a Kli Sheini, because a Kli Sheini does have the power of Bishul with respect to certain kinds of foods. What were those kinds of foods? Those were the Kalei HaBishul. Kalei HaBishul do become cooked in a Kli Sheini, even though normally speaking foods do not become cooked in a Kli Sheini, but the exception is Kalei HaBishul. So that was one instance when you have Kalei HaBishul that will have the capacity of cooking in a Kli Sheini. The Mishnah Berurah tells us in Siman Shin Yud Ches that we have to be choshesh. How do you know what's called Kalei HaBishul, what's not Kalei HaBishul? Would I thought that bread is considered to be Kalei HaBishul? Not so clear. And therefore the Mishnah Berurah says, unless we know otherwise, that a food is not Kalei HaBishul, we have a few instances in the Gemara. You have the case of Bisra de Tura, ox meat. You have the case of perhaps salt. You have certain kinds of spices. Spices we know are not considered to be Kalei HaBishul. They're just ba'al matik es hakadera, to flavor the kadera. They're not called Kalei HaBishul. Water, oil is not considered to be Kalei HaBishul. But other than those general exceptions, everything else we have to be choshesh might be called Kalei HaBishul. So that's one chumrah that you find in Kli Sheini, not to use a Kli Sheini when it comes to Kalei HaBishul. We are choshesh. Many things are Kalei HaBishul. A classic example is, of course, tea. Tea we generally assume is called Kalei HaBishul. You can't prepare tea in a Kli Sheini. Is there any difference with respect to Kalei HaBishul between a Kli Sheini and a Kli Shlishi? So here again, the Chazon Ish's general position is Ein Lechalek. What's the difference between a Kli Rishon and Kli Sheini? If it's hot enough to cook Kalei HaBishul and a Kli Sheini, so why should you make any difference between a Kli Shlishi either? And we'll see that's going to have a lot of bearing when it comes to the preparation of tea on Shabbos, which Mitzvah Hashem will discuss in a couple of moments. So that's one area of one reason that we're machmir when it comes to a Kli Sheini. The second area that we're machmir, the second reason we're machmir in a Kli Sheini is based on a very striking shita in the Balei HaTosas. So we saw the Mishnah very quickly. We're going to review very quickly. We saw the Mishnah later on in the Masechet, at the end of the Masechet, the Mishnah Daf Kuf Nun Hey and Beis. We just referenced that when it comes to Kuf Mem Hey. When it comes to, in general, we have the rule of Ein Bishul Achar Bishul. If something's been cooked before Shabbos, you're allowed to reheat it on Shabbos. Then the Mishnah tells us as follows: if it was not cooked, Kol Shelo Ba B'Chamin Me'erev Shabbos, if it was not cooked from before Shabbos, so you can't go ahead and put it in a Kli Rishon, that's real Bishul. However, Madichin Osa B'Chamin B'Shabbos, you're allowed to pour over it. You're allowed to pour over it on Shabbos itself. You can't put it inside the Kli Rishon, but you're allowed to pour on it, Madichin Osa, on Shabbos. And again, we saw the exceptions of Kalei HaBishul, Chutz Min, Kuyas HaIspinin, and Dag Maliach. So that's the Mishnah. So the Rishonim are bothered, in particular, this is a Tosfos in Masechet Shabbos on Daf Lamed Tes. So they're bothered, why is it mutter to do hadacha, to pour from the Kli Rishon onto these food items that were not cooked from before Shabbos? Why should that be mutter? After all, we usually call that irui, pouring, and we will see also in a moment that when it comes to the halacha of irui, we treat irui as having a capacity of cooking. So why should that be mutter to go ahead and pour from the Kli Rishon onto the food? After all, don't we assume that irui has the capacity to cook? And therefore that should be asur. Why is it permissible? The Mishnah says it's going to be mutter. So Tosas was bothered by this problem, and one answer in Tosas, the Ramasel Kol on Daf Lamed Tesmet Aleph Maseches Shabbos, is apparently what you have to say over here is Omeri Da'afilu B'Kli Sheini Ein Shorin. No, we have to reinterpret that Mishnah.